Hello there. Welcome to Genuine Collective. Today I'm joined with Erika Pardy. Eric and I met, oh my gosh, 20 some odd years ago or more in the holistic kind of pet industry. And we've been friends ever since, even though our paths have kind of gone separate ways. We have maintained a friendship and our just the same mutual love of all things holistic and all things dog and horse mostly. So that's our brief background. Erica, why don't you give us a little bit of a background on your experience in the animal husbandry world?
Okay. Just in the essence of time, I'll tell you very quickly that I've been in the industry for about 30 years. I started a pet nutrition company in Scotland and brought it to Canada, had it manufactured in the States. Started a magazine from my kitchen in Montana, and it went international in the first 2 months. And now it's one of the largest holistic pet communities in the world. And I am a big proponent of raw feeding and holistic health. I have a degree in animal behavior and a degree in homeopathy. So I've been practicing that for about 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been in awe of, and every time I have questions, you're my go-to, that's for sure. Even for myself,
I
as
love
you know.
I love sharing it. It's a passion of mine. So
Well, you seem to be really intuitive when it comes to that. That's one of the things that struck me with you is that it is something that is like part of the fiber of your being, if
I
that makes sense.
Yeah, and thanks for saying that. And I feel that too. I remember
Yeah.
the first time that I ever did a consultation, using homeopathy. I was working with a veterinarian, and he said, how did you come up with that remedy? And I said, well, to be honest, it was just something. I opened the drawer and it rolled towards me,
Yeah.
and I chose it, and it was the right remedy. So
Right.
it's why it's confusing. It's an art and a science. So
You're so true. And it is because, what for me, and I'm not, I took went to the British Institute of Homeopathy, I think, as you did, but I did not finish. And I have my materia medicas and I'll, I'll take them out and you get down such a rabbit hole. And if you don't have the intuitive sense in that regard, it's just a bunch of, oh, okay, that applies. Okay, that applies. Okay, that applies. And so you can keep going down this path and you never find the right remedy if you don't have that intuitive sense, which, like I said, I think that you do in spades. Um, so that brings me to the next point of this that I wanted to touch into. Is I find we both have been in dogs for a long time, horses too, but dogs are more germane to, I think, the people that would be listening to this. And I find that the veterinary care options have been changing to such a large degree. I don't know if you're going to continue breeding. I know you have potential breeding stock there, and I don't have anything that I would be breeding anymore. And the changes in veterinary care was one of the reasons that I quit breeding. There were other factors, but that was a big one. That for me was a big one. And I wanted to maybe touch a little bit on that and maybe alternatives. And one of the things that I've noticed, and this is, I hope this doesn't piss off everybody in the veterinary community, is that I feel like because all the veterinary, not all, a large amount of the veterinarians are being gobbled up by corporations, which I totally get. It's There's nothing greater than getting a couple of $1 million for a veterinary practice, and you can go retire in Florida. But for pet people, I feel that takes away some of the that mom and poppy kind of feel of that being able to have a better discussion or maybe a wait and see attitude, which seems to be more of an old school kind of thing. And even with doctoring, it's like, oh, go home, don't eat anything or whatever, and call me in the morning. Take two aspirins, call me in the morning. And so I feel like now you go in with a rear end lameness, and it is like the barrage of X-rays. Da, 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 da. There's like a laundry list of what you should do for this particular patient, um, kind of like just because they presented with rear end lameness. What are your thoughts on my assessment of the situation?
yeah, I agree. The diagnostics have gone, to for me completely out of control. I think that, and it's funny that you talk about intuitiveness. I don't know, it's it's gone such a far stretch from when, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when you were dealing with veterinarians, and they were, the country veterinarians, and they were everybody's family friend, and, they were, they got to know you. You knew who your vet was. Now you go into a vet clinic and you could be getting anybody. There could be 10 veterinarians in a clinic now, and basically they follow a diagnostic protocol. And you never know what it is. They never seem to get to the bottom. And I have personally experienced these new veterinarians, and you're walking in where once a vet bill was $500 and now it's 3,000 or 5,000. And yeah. And one thing that you might want to bring up into another podcast is the insurance companies and how they're playing a role in the cost of it.
Oh yeah. Kind of like in the States and stuff. Speaking of which, so ridiculously, and this is totally off topic. When I was living in California, I had a basal cell carcinoma on my eye. I had had that mole for 100 years. And then when just every once in a while, a drop of blood would come out. And it wasn't until I got my driver's license picture where it was a different picture 4 years later. And I'm like, wow, that's gotten bigger. Because when it grows so slowly, you don't really notice.
Right.
So every once in a while, just one drop of blood would come out. And I thought, well, let me go to the doctor. So I did. He took it out with wide margins, and he said, have to take it out to the lab. And he said, if there's no cancer, we'll bill your insurance $80. This was back in the 80s. So obviously different pricing.
Yeah.
He said, if there is cancer, your insurance company will be billed $300. He even said, he goes, I won't have done a different thing. It's just what happens. So yes, but speaking of the diagnostics, it was funny because I felt like way back in the early 2000s that things were so out of control with diagnosing and the advancing of all the ailments that were coming to our pets. Back when we were kids, hip dysplasia was pretty much the only thing that ever happened to dogs. Anything else was just a rarity. And even hip dysplasia was common. And it seemed like as more and more of the processed foods were introduced as a main diet source, that a lot more illnesses were coming. And I remember seeing my vet in Tim Hortons lineup, and I said, I'm an ass. I said, what is it that you attribute all the increase in incidence in disease that we're seeing in pets today? And she said, without skipping a beat, God bless her, said, I don't know that we're seeing an increase in any incidents. I think we're just getting better at diagnosing. It's like, okay, I guess you could see it that way. But as I've said to you before, I think our dogs are a canary in a coal mine with their advancement of and higher incidence of disease. It's going to come our way. We just haven't had as many generations reproducing bad DNA as they have.
Eating cardboard and expecting to
Eating,
maintain healthy.
Well, and you and I both know back when we started feeding raw, that was really cutting edge stuff back then. And people looked at you cross-eyed and then they would say something like, but you cook it, right? No. But you're cooking it, right? No. And what I find is what I find the hardest part of any people and animal care is when you don't have anything to compare it to, anything can look healthy. And that's what I feel like people are settling for. Their pets are alive and they're not thriving. And once I had brought, oh God, I'm talking too much, but once I brought a 9-year-old Bernese Mountain Dog to my house as a rescue, goop coming out of its eyes. 9-year-old Bernese is an old Bernese Mountain Dog, lots of dander, and when he walked, he would kind of just almost topple over. Came with a bag of Hill Science diet. As soon as he came in, the Hill Science diet went into my front closet. I was happy to be feeding my dogs, and they were getting their raw food, and so just he was obviously in the kitchen like, what's this stuff that you're getting? So I had a little handful of raw green tray, and I gave that to him. And I was working from home, so I thought, if you blow it at your ass, I'm here. We'll have at it, right?
Yeah.
Nothing, not a thing. 9 years old, no cold, just like boom, transition. So then I started feeding him raw the next meal, and no more science diet. And the dander cleared up, the goop cleared up, even the muscle atrophy and his uncoordination that cleared up. It was just so when you can see it profoundly in an older dog who is looking of iller health, it's so much more striking the difference between what people are accepting as normal pet dog odor, shedding, all the things that they accept as normal is just not.
Well, what would a human body look like if it ate, pop Coca-Cola and chocolate and chips for
Well, they say, but they've said that even if humans ate species appropriate diets, we wouldn't even need deodorant because we wouldn't be emitting the toxins out of
right,
our
right,
largest filtering
right.
organ, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things too about veterinary care, and I didn't when we spoke the last time, I didn't mention this, but I'm going to mention it here. And not that I'm affiliated with these people at all, but there's a new online because you know how they have telecare for humans, right? Where you can call in. There's actually a company called Vetster, and I'm going to link it below too, because that is, I think they're winning awards for rapid growth and stuff like that, and they have a team of obviously veterinarians, but it is like telecare for people and their pets, which I think might be advantageous, especially in that over diagnosing. Let's run the battery of tests when your dog just comes in with,
I can't
something.
imagine though that those guys are going to take on the liability, for not getting
It's
you into
it's
a vet clinic, right?
it's a viable company. I mean, with housing veterinarians. So, and I imagine there is, like a what they would handle, and they
Well,
probably.
it would be a really great change because right now you can't even get dewormer over the counter. They
Well,
want
that's the thing. So there would be,
you to then
yeah.
spend
So
a consultation fee to get
So, I
dewormer.
mean, you would have to charge, they would charge them, and I don't know how scripts work and stuff. I haven't used it, but I'm
Mm.
going to put it down below because I do know a woman, a friend of mine in Bernese Mountain Dogs who actually works there. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even known about it. But on LinkedIn, they're getting posting with a lot of different awards that they're winning for rapid growth and.
They're still allopathic veterinarians though, so it still kind of defeats the whole purpose of being able to do your own care, right?
Oh,
It's
well, for sure. But for me, and one of the things that this is a terrible thing to say, but what I used to use my veterinarian for was a diagnostician.
mhm.
And then I would then
Yeah.
I would go find what I wanted to use to if I could to fix
Well,
the problem, which more often than not I did. But I would use them as a diagnostician just to make sure that I was on the right track or whatever.
and why not? People do it all the time with
Yeah, yeah.
human doctors. You go in and you have diabetes. Well, you can go on this medication, or you can change your diet, or you can try some natural remedies, or So
Yeah.
why would it be any different for pets?
Well, then exactly, you're exactly right, and that's exactly the point too. You're right because and I feel like they don't tell you about you can do this or you can here. It's just here's the script.
Yeah,
Here we're going to fix this symptom that we see presenting, which is giving you an opportunity to fix something deeper. But instead, we're just gonna sublimate. We're
yeah,
gonna step
because
down
because
those symptoms
because
symptoms because that's easy.
they have such little training in nutrition, so they can't do a diagnostic on nutrition because they don't know, right?
And
They're,
that's the thing
veterinarians
for
are
both pets
surgeons.
and people.
Veterinarians are surgeons, and that's where they should really concentrate their expertise on is if your dog needs a leg amputated, or if it needs to be
Yeah,
sewn up, or if it needs a surgery,
yeah,
then call your vet. But if
yeah.
your dog has a nutritional deficiency that's causing problems, then it should
Same with people. It's the
diet
same with
should be
people.
talked about, right? And I mean,
Mhm.
I always gauge my veterinarian, on the common sense factor. If they're trying to convince me that raw feeding is bad for your pet, then I'm sorry, but Kibble has only been around for 50 years. What did they do before that?
Well,
And
and not only that to me, but for me, it's like processed and refined food isn't good for anybody
no,
ever. Like
exactly.
that we're being told to eat 5 to 10 servings of fruits and vegetables a day in order to lead a healthy life, but yet we're supposed to put this over processed, totally foreign substance spray coated with vitamins to
Yeah,
make it 100% complete
synthetic,
and call that.
synthetic cardboard, I call it.
Yeah, yeah,
Cooked at such high
yeah.
temperatures, right? Because most of the product is so
Well, yeah.
inappropriate. The
And
four
even
dead
and
dying
I don't
disease
know.
thing.
I don't. Yeah, I don't know shit from Shinola, but even now that they're saying that there's omega-3 fatty acids in their on the kibble now, it's like it's spray coated, and if it's so volatile that air is going to denigrate and potentially even make it hazardous, but yet this big 20-pound bag of kibble lasts like a month or 3 weeks or whatever it lasts, and it's like it's being open and closed and open and closed. It's like
Yeah.
good really is those EFAs on there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, again, it just takes common sense to kind of
Yeah.
think about it. Would you raise your kids on a box of Cheerios?
I know if total was all I needed, because total's supposed to be complete, right? If
Right.
total
Yeah.
was all I needed, then I'd never have to eat anything else. And you're right, like no one would eat processed and refined food. And it's all about stacking the deck. Like you don't have to be a saint and your dog can eat, you know, the odd kibble meal. I when I bred Bernese Mountain Dogs too, I never even said to people that they had to feed
Mm.
raw because it has to work for you. But even if it's like if you wanted to throw down the kibble in the morning and then feed raw at night, I'm fine with
Well,
that because it's
I
stacking
have
the
a
deck.
bag. I have a bag of kibble,
Mm.
all the time, but I don't expect my dogs to get nutritional value from it. I use it as a filler. I use it to fill them up when like my daughter-in-law is vegan.
Mm.
So when I go stay with my kids, there's no way that, I'm bringing meat into her house.
Mm.
Um, so I either have to sneak it and feed them in,
Mm.
in my Jeep, or I just bring kibble, for the day. So
And
it's,
that's it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, it's like I go out every once in a while and I'll have a meal of a hamburger and a pizza and, this or that
Nachos or whatever.
those. So it's balance, right? It's
Yeah.
balance. So as long
Yeah.
as you're meeting what the body needs and not exceeding it with indigestible protein sources, then your dog will
Right.
be able to eliminate the nitrogenic waste from it, and will still be able to. And that's the whole issue, right? It has to be able to eliminate what's being put in the body that is not being
Mhm.
digested. If it can't eliminate it, then that's when you get the disease happening, right?
Right. And it's again the same thing with the people is, like I said before, the skin being the largest eliminatory organ, and a lot of the excessive shedding, the dander of the dogs and stuff. It is certainly an indication that the internal filtering organs are overworked, overtaxed,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
then the body is having
It's
to
not
and
allergies, people. It's not allergies.
it really always used to kind of astound me how people were so accepting of the things that were
Well,
dog like yeah tartar
vet,
on the teeth, like
yes,
all the things that just aren't. No,
there's no
no.
practicality to it, right? And
Yeah.
unfortunately, you go in and you trust your veterinarian, and that's what your veterinarian says, and so
Right.
therefore, you don't know any better,
No,
right?
exactly. And
So
well, there was a study when I did my raw food company back in 2000, I started, but in 2003, Ipsos Re did a syndicated study, which means somebody paid for it. And somebody would have been probably large chemical companies. But what they had discerned in this was there was four different categories of pet ownership. But in across the board, and I'm paraphrasing my numbers, I don't have my study anywhere within arm's reach, but it was something like $947 million was spent on pet food across Canada, and this was back in 2003, whereas I think like $1,047 million was spent on veterinary care. Because back in the 2000s when I was trying to convince people to spend that extra dollar a day putting it there, but it was for me, it was like you're spending the money. You're either spending it at your veterinarians or you're going to put it in your dog's pool. There's just no question the money's being spent. How do you want to spend it? Do you want to have your dog thrive? Do you want to have your dog live a long and healthy life with no tartar and very little shedding and no doggy odor and less hospitable to parasites? And on and on and on. I mean, the pluses just keep going up. I don't, especially now that the price of kibble is off the charts. I don't even know how or why anyone still feeds it.
yeah, I don't understand it myself. I went and bought some kibble the other day, and I did the calculations, and it was almost $8 a pound.
Right? But and back when I started in 2000, there was a huge difference, and that's the thing is that the difference now isn't the same. The difference in uh, the price of kibble versus or a decent kibble. I'm sure you could still find the really bottom of the barrel ones, but even they're not as cheap as they used to
No,
be. That's for sure. But that's the thing. It's like now it's just not even any excuse to not be feeding well,
yeah.
especially with all the commercially available raw foods that are out there. And as you know, and
Mhm.
I don't know if my listeners do, so this is why I'm bringing it up, but like Rodney Habib, who is actually in Nova Scotia, huge following, charismatic guy with some great videos. Him and Karen Becker, who's a DVM out of the States, wrote a book called The Forever Dog. And they wrote a follow-up book, I think, about bringing it home more of how to create the diets and stuff like that. That's the second book. I don't think that's published yet. but they have certainly made great strides in making these things available and the commercial availability. And those two, I think, got some studies. They did studying of raw foods across the board. I think U.S. and Canada, because she is from the States, in nutritional completeness of these varying diets that are out there. But there's so many commercially available ones and some pretty decent priced ones out there that really there's just no excuse anymore.
Yeah, there's, I'm very much on, like I said, balance. So I don't spend a lot of time making recipes. I'm
Yeah.
more of a carnivore, type diet. I have fish, beef, chicken, and I pretty much rotate between those three protein sources. And
Hmm.
like I said, I've never had a problem, doing that. I belong to a co-op here in Newfoundland, and we order truckloads of it. It's cut into blocks and frozen, and it comes every 3 months. I stock my freezer up with it. I take out what I need. I thaw it,
Yeah.
and it's pretty simple. I don't add
It
grains,
is simple.
vegetables, and stuff to my particular, like I said, because I do a carnivore diet. Um,
Hmm.
but if you're an over carer, you can certainly, or if you
You're
have,
overcare, or if your dogs are more sedentary too. I mean, you're very active with your dogs, and I find that what I feel like some leafy greens do and stuff is gives a little more filler and less calories if you just got a really sedentary dog. But it's true. I do know a lot of people who really overanalyze that stuff.
yeah, they tend
Yeah.
to, yeah, overthink things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But there are, I mean, I've done specific diets for specific diseases, and specific things that you do need to have particular ingredients, depending on what it
Yeah,
is that
yeah.
the situation is. But for the most part, if your dog is, especially if your dog is raised on a carnivore diet,
Hmm.
it's, I have an 8-year-old whippet here now. And, usually those guys have really bad teeth. Uh,
Right, right, right.
and by 8 you would certainly see it.
Yeah.
So she's got beautiful teeth. My Malinois, who is a very, very active boy, if he was on Kibble,
Mm.
I could not afford to keep him. And
Mhm.
if he was on Kibble, the amount of energy that he has, he would be and crapping it out eating and crapping it out and not maintaining, right? So
Mm.
I've seen them. He'd be skinny. His coat would be a mess
Mm.
because, like I said, finding a kibble that is, enough that you can feed enough to put weight on them so they're not crapping it out is
Yeah.
I don't think that
Yeah.
kibble exists yet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
That was the thing that I noticed at the beginning was when you mentioned coat is when I first switched, it was with my German Shepherd who tore a cruciate. And she was a long-haired Shepherd, but her coat was that little a bit wiry, that wiry, harsher kind of feeling. And I want to say like almost immediately, her coat changed
well,
to a really soft, luxurious,
and I mean, the
silky
simplest thing
feeling.
is the amount of poop that you have to pick up.
Oh,
It's practically nothing. And if I don't get to it right away, it dries up and blows away.
I used to live in Toronto, and I would swear because I'd be walking with a German Shepherd and one or two Bernese Mountain Dogs, depending on what time when it was, and I would have these tiny little bags of my poop, and I always used to think people
and no
probably,
smell.
and I used to think people are looking at me like, yeah, right, that's the dog. I was like, I swear,
Oh yeah, yeah.
but
It's
it's true. And I used to brought the dogs at my brother-in-law's mixed breed Labrador, and he was kibble fed. And honestly, I used to dry heave when I had to pick up his poops because it was two hands. He was a
yeah,
big dog, 120 pounds, and it was just like,
yeah.
oh, yeah,
Oh,
it's
this
just
yeah.
crazy.
The smell is really bad, and it doesn't break down,
It
right?
just
Like
dies. Well, that it's funny. We're getting so off topic, but that's funny because the spring thaw, when you have before, if you fed when you fed kibble,
oh
those
yeah,
poops overwintered
they would
and they
still
just
be
have
there.
they would still be there, just soggy, wet, soggy, huge, not broken down at all. And you'd have to do the big pickup because all the snow finally melted and it was just like a minefield of big,
and
huge.
and it's amazing, like I said, if you raise your dog on raw, it's amazing how little they eat.
Well, yeah.
you know.
They're better at self-regulating, knowing just when to shut it off because they've had enough. Like
Well,
that.
and the water content, right? So there's a high
Oh,
water content
yeah,
in raw feeding.
yeah,
So, you know, they absorb literally what they need and they get the nutrients, they get the water. My dogs barely
yeah,
drink water because they don't need
yeah.
to.
Well,
Um,
that's it. You usually end up tossing the water and cleaning out the bowl because it sits there too long.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Pros.
I'm gonna. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say lots of pros.
There's only pros. I don't know a negative at
Yeah.
this point in the game. I remember one last anecdotal story. I remember I was dog sitting a Bernese Mountain Dog who was fed kibble. This is a long time ago. And because this dog feeds kibble, and I picked up I used to feed beef neck bones because they're nice and they got the ridges and they're good for cleaning teeth, raw, of
Mhm.
course. And I went in the backyard and I cleaned up all the bones and I didn't want him to get into any of those. Somehow he found it totally picked clean. So it was just the vertebrae of a beef neck bone in the backyard. And when he got home, she picked him up. And when they got home, they said, "What did you do to his teeth?" And I'm like, "Ruh-roh." I'm like, "Uh-oh, what did I do?" And I said, "Nothing." And she's like, "They are immaculate." And I said, "Well, truth be told, we did get his hands on one of my beef neck bones." So even a kibble fed dog who got a stripped clean beef neck bone, cleaned up all that tartar off the teeth. And I used to say that to people too. Even if you have to feed kibble, at the very least, feed beef neck bones because that will do all the cleaning up, all the tartar in the teeth. That is just because the dogs don't have the amylase in their saliva when they eat the
Right.
carbs of the kibble. It sits on their teeth, and that's why it creates the
Yeah,
tartar.
yeah, and just to just to let everybody know when we're talking about bones, please do not give raw hides. Very, very dangerous. Please
That's
do
the
not.
only thing I've ever pulled out of my dog's mouth is choking on is rawhides. Yeah.
Yep. And
Anytime I see someone feeding those, I'm like,
I was at a place yesterday, and there was a booth from a pet store, and they were talking about smoked bones. And I
mm,
took them aside after, and I said, "Please do not buy smoked bones. They will chip. There will be shards. It is very, very dangerous." And I
yeah,
cannot believe that they get away with selling them because I've
yeah.
seen what they can do. So do not buy smoked beef bones that are being sold at pet stores.
One step further even is for me the shank bones, the ones that are cut. If they're end to end and they've got the knobs in the end, that's one
Yeah.
thing. But a shank bone that's just it's just like a block of concrete with a stuffed with
Yeah,
a
and that's a
stick of
good
butter,
concrete. That's exactly what it's
stuffed with
like.
a stick of butter. And so for me, it's like especially if you got a really good aggressive chewer, something's going to give, and I guarantee it's not going to be the femur.
Yeah,
It's going to be your dog's tooth. There's really no benefits. It's lard in the center and it's concrete around the outside. There's no benefit. So you can do the knuckle parts of it because they can scrape around them, but the shank bones, you get the slab fractures potentially, and they don't get into all the scraping that the other
yeah,
bones
like you
can
said, there's
do.
no point,
Yeah,
unless they're, unless you're
take
watching
advantage of
them
it.
and they lick the marrow out from,
Yeah,
in the bone itself. But, yeah, there's no
yeah.
benefit.
It's
Rib
it's
rib bones
yeah.
are
The shank bones, they're not cheap enough. They're the ones that are bandsaw. They're not cheap enough to just do it just so they can have the marrow.
right,
Like, no,
right,
I'd rather get something they're getting a nutritional value out of.
and they can
Just
actually
get a little bit
digest
of
it.
meat off of it, and they
Yeah.
can, yeah.
I always do the knee bones. I love the knee
Yeah,
bones.
yeah, the nice cartilagey stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
those are the best ones.
Those are actually probably easier to find. I think sometimes I know that there are companies that sell beef neck bones frozen, cut up in different sizes, so small,
Mhm.
medium, large. And
And
those Holden
go
Farms
to
is one.
your butcher and get necks, turkey necks,
Yeah,
and chicken necks. Oh, I love
chicken necks, turkey necks.
necks and turkey necks.
A
They're
lot of the more ethnic stores will do that too. And even chicken feet are extremely beneficial with the glucosamine and hydrochloride that's in them. Huge benefits for the chicken feet. And again, so if you go to more ethnic type places that would human people would be eating, and then you can get those kind
yeah,
of things
yeah.
there. Like not a
I'll,
lot of like the Sobeys or the any of those big chain
no,
stores will have
I get mine in private butchers. They'll bring
yeah
in the
butchers or ethnic type stores. Yeah, you can
yeah,
get
yeah.
a better assortment
I
there.
don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Newfoundland is limited for that, but certainly if I was in Toronto, Chinatown,
Yeah.
at the market, wow, like
Yeah.
you guys got a gold mine down there.
And even Greektown, you
Oh
can
yeah.
get some good stuff in Greektown. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I used to. I don't know what the prices are going to be like this year, but probably
yeah.
unaffordable. But I would go into the grocery stores around Thanksgiving and Christmas where you get your turkeys for 99 cents a pound.
Yes,
Would
yes,
stock
yes,
up
yes,
on
me
that.
too.
And then
Yeah,
you just get yourself a nice,
yeah. And I'm
um,
gonna say, when I first started feeding raw before, I used to have a private butcher, not a private, but like a small
yeah,
town butcher. But also, if you, and it still happens, if you go into the big grocery stores on Sunday morning, like first thing in the morning, that's when they're pricing down all the meat stuff.
yeah.
And you can go in and scoop up on meat really cheap. I used to feel like kind of goofy going to the checkout with liver and stuff. I'm thinking this poor checkout person probably thinks that's what I live on.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I know.
It's
I've
my
had some
dogs.
interesting things like that too. Liver's great, but I can never get my dogs to eat liver. So,
Oh
um,
no, I would have to mix it up with stuff. No, I know they liver it on itself. No,
but
no.
chicken hearts, any
Yes,
kind of heart is very, very good.
yes.
Sweetbreads. I used to get sweetbreads
Oh
in
yeah, I don't know if you can get those
which was
anymore.
very, very good. That's the thymus
Yeah,
for from cows. But and again, if you're outside of the city, call up some people who hunt, and
yes, absolutely. You see that a lot when it comes to new hunting season. You see a lot of people putting ads out for last year's freezer meat,
yep.
which for dogs it's totally fine. The texture meat wouldn't be maybe ideal for a human, but for dogs they don't care. They
But
inhale it so fast they don't care about texture.
yeah, the best thing is to try and find yourself a co-op where people are doing
Yeah,
orders and stuff like that. There was a fantastic one in Ontario, and it ranged all the way from Toronto to Ottawa. And I've
yeah,
never done so many parking lot transactions in my life when I was when I'm feeding my dog.
yeah. Yeah, but bigger cities like Ontario, the GTA area, they have access to so many commercial brands and
Yeah,
stuff. It's
yeah.
just, it's a gold mine. Like I said, like you said, there's no reason not to be feeding raw right now.
Yeah,
That's for
just look
sure.
it up on Facebook. Look for a raw feeding group, and
Yeah,
you'll
yeah.
find it pretty easily.
Get some information. So I'm going to cut that off here. We're going to next time we meet up, we'll talk a little bit more some homeopathy. We're going to talk a little bit more about training and any other things I can think of. But so we'll leave this one now for this little bit of the raw food veterinary care thing, and then we'll catch up again and talk some more about other things, dog.
Sounds
But thank
great.
you so much. I'll put your contact information below if anyone needs to contact you with regard to anything. We'll talk more about training in future episodes, and they can maybe contact you about any behavioral issues. But for now, I'll leave your contact information below in the show notes.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Jen, for having me on.
Thank
It's
you
great.
so
I always
much.
love
My
to talk
pleasure.
about
Thank you.
anything I can do
Yeah.
to help educate. Have a
Thank
great
you so
evening.
much.
Very
Thank you, you
welcome.
too. Bye.
Bye.